Version 1, The Valiant Little Tailor. In a small town called Romandia there was a tailor who, while working, had an apple lying beside him on which many flies had landed, as is usual during the summertime. This made the tailor angry, so he took a piece of cloth and struck the apple, killing 7 of the flies. When the foolish tailor saw this, he thought to himself that his deed was good, so he had a very beautiful suit of armor made and wrote on it in golden letters, 7 at one blow. He wore the armor in the street and anyone who saw him thought he had killed 7 people at once, so he was feared by everyone. In the same area there was a king whose praise was heard far and wide. The lazy tailor went to the king's court, lay down in the grass and fell asleep. The courtiers who came and went saw the tailor in his rich armor and read the inscription, and they were very surprised as to what this warrior was doing in the king's court during peacetime. They thought he must be a great lord. The counselors who also saw him, reported to the king that he would be a very useful man in case of discord. The king was pleased with their words and sent for the armored tailor to ask if he wanted to serve. The tailor quickly answered that he had come for that very purpose and asked the king to assign him any task that he needed. The king agreed to employ him and gave him a special task. It wasn't long before the horsemen became angry with the good tailor. They wished he were in hell because they feared they could not resist him if he were to kill 7 at a blow. They constantly thought about how they could get rid of him, but in the end, they came to the conclusion to all go together to the king and ask for leave. The king was a sad man when he saw all his servants asking for leave because of one man. He wanted to get rid of the tailor but did not dare to give him leave because he was afraid the tailor would come back and kill him and his people. He sought advice and finally came up with a plan to get rid of the tailor who nobody thought was a real warrior. The king sent for the tailor and told him that he had heard that he was a powerful warrior. He said that there were 2 giants in the forest who were causing great damage by robbing, murdering, and burning. Nobody could approach them with weapons or anything else because they would kill everyone. If the tailor dared to kill the giants, he would give him his daughter as a wife, half his kingdom as a dowry, and he would also give him 100 horsemen to help him fight the giants. The tailor was happy at the thought of becoming the son-in-law of a king and said that he could kill the giants even without the help of the horsemen. He went into the forest and asked the horsemen to wait outside. After searching for a long time, he found the giants sleeping under a tree and snoring so loud that the branches on the tree were shaking. Trees were bending. The tailor didn't think long about what he should do, quickly filled his pockets with stones, climbed up the tree under which they were lying, and began throwing one of the stones at his chest, causing him to wake up immediately and become angry at the other for hitting him. The other one excused himself as best he could and they tried to go back to sleep. But then the tailor picked up another stone and threw it at the other, causing him to become angry and ask why he was being hit. When they stopped arguing and closed their eyes, the tailor threw a stone very hard at the first giant, causing him to wake up and angrily hit his friend, thinking he had been hit by him, which the other didn't want to tolerate. They got up, pulled trees out of the ground, and beat each other to death. Fortunately, they left the tree on which the tailor was sitting standing. When the tailor saw this, he felt better than he ever had before, happily climbed down from the tree, and wounded or hit each of them with his sword before leaving the forest and returning to the riders. The riders asked him if he had seen the giants anywhere. Yes, said the tailor, I killed them and left them lying under the tree. But they didn't believe that he could come out of a fight with giants unharmed and went to the forest to see this wonder for themselves. They found it exactly as the tailor had said. They were very surprised, frightened, and felt worse than before because they feared that if the tailor were their enemy, he would kill them all. So they rode home and told the king what had happened. The tailor asked for the daughter and half the kingdom as promised, but when the king saw that the giants were dead and realized he had promised his daughter to the unknown warrior, he regretted his promise and tried to find a way out of it. He told the tailor that there was a unicorn in the forest that was causing him and his people great harm by eating their fish and hurting their people, and that if he caught it, he would give him his daughter. The tailor agreed to this and took a rope with him into the forest, telling his associates to wait outside. He walked around in the forest and saw the unicorn coming toward him, intending to kill him. But the tailor was quick and waited until the unicorn came very close to him before jumping aside and quickly tying the rope around its neck. He led the unicorn back to the king, who was surprised and dismayed that he had actually caught it. So he kept his promise and gave the tailor his daughter and half the kingdom. When he was near it, he stood behind the tree, although he was very close to it, but the unicorn, which could not turn in full speed, ran into the tree with its horn and got stuck in it. When the tailor saw this, he went over to the unicorn, put the rope that he had brought around its neck and tied it to the tree. He then went back to his companions, announced his victory over the unicorn, and later told the king about it. The king was extremely sad and did not know what to do, as the tailor had asked for his daughter's hand in marriage. But the king asked the warrior once again to catch the wild boar that roamed in the forest. After that, he would give him his daughter without delay, and would even assign his hunters to help him catch the wild boar. The tailor went to the forest with his companions, and when they arrived, he ordered them to stay outside, which they were quite happy to do, as the wild boar had attacked them so many times that they no longer wanted to pursue it. The tailor went in, and when the wild boar saw him, it ran straight at him with foaming mouth and sharpened teeth, trying to throw him to the ground. Fortunately, there was a chapel in the forest, where people used to get indulgences. The tailor ran into the chapel and jumped out the window above, and the boar followed him in. The tailor quickly ran to the door, closed it, and locked the beast in the chapel. He then went to his companions and told them what had happened, and they rode home and reported it to the king. It is not clear from the text whether the king was happy or sad about the news. He had to give his daughter to an unknown tailor, which must have caused him great distress. However, the good-hearted tailor did not care about such things, and he only thought about how he could become the king's son-in-law. The wedding was eventually celebrated with little joy, and a king was made out of a tailor. However, after spending a few nights with his bride, the tailor talked in his sleep and said, "Servant, make me a jacket, mend my trousers, or I will hit you with the measuring stick." The good virgin noticed this and reported it to her father, the king. He also requested that the man should help rid her of her husband, so that she might realize that he was a tailor. The king's heart was so moved by this speech that he would have given his only daughter to a tailor. But he comforted her as best he could and told her to open her chamber that night. He would have several servants stationed outside her room, and if he said anything more than usual, they should enter. This pleased the woman. Now the king had a weapon-bearer at his court who was fond of the tailor and had overheard the king's words to the woman. He quickly went to the young king and told him of the harsh judgment that had been passed on him, and begged him to protect himself as best he could. The tailor thanked him for his warning and said he knew how to handle the situation. When night fell, the tailor lay down with the young queen, pretending to be asleep. The woman secretly got up, opened the chamber door, and returned to bed. The tailor, who had heard everything, began to speak in a loud voice as if in his sleep, so that those outside the chamber could hear. "Servant, make me some pants, stitch my jacket, or I'll hit you over the head with a yardstick. I've killed 7 with one blow, I've caught a unicorn and a wild boar, so why should I fear those outside the chamber?" When those outside the chamber heard these words, they fled as if they were being chased by 1,000 devils. None of them dared to confront the tailor, so he remained a king for the rest of his life. Version 2: The Valiant Little Tailor. One summer morning, a little tailor was sitting on his table in front of the window when a farmer's wife passed by the street calling out, "Good jam for sale! Good jam for sale!" The little tailor stuck his head out of the window and called back, "Come up here, dear woman, you'll make a good deal." When the woman came up, he examined all the pots of jam, and finally bought 1/4 of a pound. He then cut a piece of bread from the loaf, spread the jam on it, put it on the table beside him, and thought to himself, "You will taste good, but first I will finish sewing this waistcoat before I eat you." He began to sew and made big stitches with joy. Meanwhile, the smell of the jam wafted out and attracted a swarm of flies, which landed on the bread with jam. "Who invited you to the party?" said the tailor, and shooed them away. But soon they returned, and even more of them landed on the bread. The little tailor became angry, grabbed a large cloth, and struck it down on the flies. Afterwards, he counted how many he had killed, and there were 29 dead flies in front of him. "Are you such a man?" he said to himself, surprised at what he had done. In the joy of his heart, he sewed himself a belt and embroidered on it, 29 in one blow. "You must go out into the world," thought the little tailor. He put on the belt and searched the house to see if there was anything to take with him. He found an old cheese, which he put in his pocket, and along the way he caught a bird and put it in there too. The little tailor climbed up a high mountain, and when he reached the top, he saw a giant sitting on the peak. He said to the giant, "Comrade, how are you? You look around the world up here, and I want to get into it too." The giant looked at him contemptuously and said, "You're a miserable fellow." The little tailor opened his coat and showed the giant the belt, saying, "There you can see what kind of man you have before you." The giant read the words 29 in one blow. And since he thought the little tailor had killed 29 people with one blow, he began to respect him, but he wanted to test him first. He took a stone and squeezed it so hard that water came out of it. "You're not that strong," said the giant. "If that's all," said the little tailor, "I can do that too." He then took the cheese out of his pocket and squeezed it so hard that the juice ran out. "See, that was even better." The giant was amazed and threw a stone so high that it could hardly be seen anymore. "Do that," he said. "The throw was good," said the little tailor, "but your stone had to come back down to earth, whereas I will throw one that won't come back." He then took the bird out of his pocket and threw it into the air, and the bird flew away. "How do you like that?" The giant was astonished and impressed. He slapped the little tailor on the back and they went on together. They came to a cherry tree, and the giant took the crown and bent it down to give the little tailor some cherries to eat. But the little tailor was too weak and couldn't resist the strength of the tree, and he was lifted up with the tree. "What is this?" said the giant. "Couldn't you hold on to the weak twig?" "That's nothing," replied the little tailor, "that's nothing to what I can do. You only see the bark of the tree, but I'll soon make the tree itself come down." And he took out his belt, and tied one end of it round the tree, and the other end he fastened to his waist, and pulled with all his might, but the tree only shook and remained firm. "Ha! Ha!" said the giant, "You poor little creature, you are not strong enough to pull up a radish." "But do you think," retorted the tailor, "that what you are doing there is any great feat? You are only shoving the branches about a little. I will show you what strength is." And he drew out his axe, and with one blow he cut the tree in two. "Now, what do you think of that?" said he. The giant fell down quite thunderstruck, and then the little tailor, unloosing his girdle, drew out the sword, and with a few giant strides he walked up to the giant, and said, "Now, you heap of earth, wilt thou yield thyself? Or must I strike thee to the ground?" This is missing further information.